Hello, everybody. We are live again for Surviving Quarantine by Spreading Life. And I'm excited because we have Brian Kelly with us today. He is an amazing leadership coach, and he also has a lot of fundamentals about creating better, but creating better together. And that's what will be talking about today. And so, first off, thank you, Brian, so much for joining us, as I'm excited for people to hear your thoughts and your wisdom that you have to give. And before we get started, I do want to encourage everybody to please like, subscribe, and share as we're doing this, because the more people that get to see it, the more positivity we get to spread to your news feed. So let's go ahead and hop into it, Brian. Tell us about yourself. You there, Brian?
Yes, thank you, Emily. So I'm Brian Kelly. Great to be with you here today. And I am a people and team development consultant and coach. I help people unleash their human greatness to create better together and to create more impact. And so looking forward to having our conversation today.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and get started with that. What is creating better mean? And then why do we add the word together with it?
So creating better is just, how do you continue to grow? How do you grow purposefully in the direction you're looking to grow, personally, professionally? How do you build your noticing muscle of noticing when you're going off course, that kind of thing? And the aspect of together. So personal, if you're going through personal growth, that's often you're going to get help from other people. So it's even though it's your journey, it's still together. But what I've found is playing team sports and being on teams is there's so much more possibility for creating greater impact when you do it together and tapping into each person's strengths, each person's brilliance. That's just something I have a passion for, in terms of how do we I understand what each person has to bring, and how do we see the possibilities for bringing that together in a way that amplifies better and creates greater impact.
I love that. If anybody ever gets an email from me, I have this statement that says the kiss of death is to be the genius with 10,000 helpers. Instead, be the genius with 10,000 geniuses. And that's what's resonating with me right now, is hearing that and how you're talking about it. And as I do want to pop on real quick and say thank you to Ashley for watching, and Laura for watching as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We are glad that you're here. And anybody that's watching, if you have questions throughout this time, please feel free to ask them. One thing I want to talk to you about is noticing muscle that you just said. I love that. I say awareness, but I may be stealing this now, because it's a muscle. It is. It's something that you have to, it's not a physical muscle, but it kind of like it is, because you have to work at it. So let's speak about the noticing muscle and the importance of building that up.
So it's directly related to my journey and getting more self-awareness. Before I got involved with this work, I spent most of my time in my head, and I wasn't really noticing cues in my body and whatnot. So the term noticing muscle just resonated with me. It's just a terminology for growth and expanded awareness. But before we can create new awareness, we have to start noticing what's going on around us, listening for language, listening for energy, which are two of the main things I look for as a coach to understand and connect with people. Is the words they say is one thing, but their energy and their language around it is so informative. And so building a noticing muscle in terms of, hey, I'm doing things, but I'm doing things that really are aligned with where I want to be going, that matter to me, that resonate, and checking in with yourself. And so with this current situation we're going through, right? People are experiencing different things, all wide range of emotions. And so how are you showing up in those situations? Is there fear coming up? If fear is coming up, how are you engaging with that? And so one of the things I've been talking to people about is using fear not as something to kind of try and avoid or get away from, but kind of embrace it and look at the invitation that it offers, in terms of, what is this telling me I should be looking at? What is this inviting me to see, kind of thing? Possibility, right? A friend of mine recently brought up this distinction that I think might be valuable to our listeners is, so really when we're kind of afraid, it's really that we're in danger. So unless you're really in danger, fear is just the emotion behind that, right? And so there's how many true instances of danger do we experience on a daily basis? However, not many, but many instances of feeling or processing as if there's fear going on in our bodies and what's going on around us. So how we choose to engage with that can create a new experience for us.
I love that, because that's something that we speak on is about cortisol, or we call it the angry coworker. And sometimes we see angry coworkers as tigers and bears, and that they're going to eat us alive, and they're not. Or it doesn't even have to be an angry coworker. It can be an angry family member. It's just that one, whenever they walk into the room and you're like, oh my, I have to deal with them again. Like, that's them owning you. Do you have the awareness? And like you said, the noticing muscle to even see at that point that they actually owned you and they changed your physiology. And to realize that in this space of fear, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And what are you doing? Because we know no matter what, it's breaking down our creativity, because we can't expand and we can't learn and we can't have clarity that you were speaking about. So that's my next question for you is, why is clarity so important in this?
So for direction, right? And so in terms of knowing kind of clarity in terms of, am I present to what's going on around me? So I think even before clarity, it's probably presence. Am I in the moment, or am I thinking about what I need to do at 6 o'clock, or am I thinking about what happened 2 hours ago? So being present is one thing, so that you're focused and able to notice what's going on. And then clarity in terms of asking yourself the questions of, is what I'm doing aligned with what I want to do? Is how I'm showing up in my relationships the way I want to be showing up? What is working in terms of, let's start with the positive. What is working in terms of how I'm showing up? What would I like to be different? And how do I create different? And oftentimes it requires all these things, right? Presence, noticing, expanded awareness, a vision for how you'd like to be better. So that vision and that long-term goal gives you the future state. And then how do you create that? Well, you do that through noticing, and shifting habits is basically what it ultimately comes down to, and building practices to create new habits to create better.
And I think that's something that's big, because human behavior all starts with a thought, and that thought leads to an action, which leads to a behavior, which leads to ultimately to a habit. And so a lot of times we want to work on the habit first, but we got to take a few steps back and look at the thinking and the thought process. What is the stimulus for the response, in essence, on that? And I do want to point out Nathan's comment that I've noticed during this COVID time, I haven't embraced the fear like I have in the past. Normally, I would have embraced the fear. And I understand that, because I feel at this point, it's a different fear, because there's so many more uncertainties. And then you also have to add into human behavior. It's like a child. Whenever you tell them no, it's like you want to fight against it. And then as adults, us being told, no, we can't do things, that adds another factor into it. And then as Americans, there's the freedom aspect. And so there's all these different, it's like, how do you process this all at one time? And then we're going on, and we've been wanting to have our goals. We want to be better. We want to create better. And so what are some actionable steps that people can do today to not only embrace the fear, but also how can they be better? Like, give 3 actionable steps that people can probably do today?
So I'm going to start with mindset, right? The first thing about better is to forget about comparison. You're competing against yourself, right? And so how you think about creating change or creating better is going to either support your ability to do that or not. So that's the first place I'd look, is your mindset. The other thing is, what about the notion of unlearning? So for me on my journey, I've had to do a lot of unlearning to be able to grow, right? And it sounds maybe counterintuitive. Don't you learn to grow? Well, yes, and you also unlearn, because we've all got stories and limiting beliefs that tend to hold us back and become sort of cataracts in terms of how we see ourselves and see the possibilities in life. So the other thing would be to unlearn. And then the invitation in terms of how do you create better, and this is part of the journey I help people with, is unmuting, right? The stories of not good enough, playing small, not sharing your voice. We want to amplify that. So what matters to you? Step into the discomfort that change and better might require for you to get to that better place. And so I would look there, the mindset, then thinking about unlearning and unmuting so that you can create better, so you can show up bigger with more volume. And I mean so in an intentional way, not just to just be loud, just to be clear with that. And unmute yourself. Say, by doing that, what you're essentially saying is I matter. And I think more of us need to get back to this notion of I matter, not from an ego perspective, but from a soul perspective, and say, I matter, my voice matters. How might I contribute?
Mm-hmm. And I love that aspect. I hear so much on that I want to go into. But the first thing that I matter and going in with that, and why it's so important and it's not self-absorbed, is because if you can't love yourself, if you can't lead yourself, if you can't be aware of yourself, you can't be aware of other things. It's going to be very, very difficult. And I have children. If I can't do that for myself, I can't expect that of them. And so my goal as a mother is to lead my children to be upstanding citizens. My goal as a business leader is to lead a team that can give and to grow and to create purpose for others and to create a change in not only the work, but also the human aspect of it. So I absolutely love that. And the other thing that is that comparison, and I love that you said unlearning, because I always talk about self-comparison is a trap. We need to have self-compassion. So self-comparison is seeing one to another, apples to apples, like how are they doing it? Instead of looking like self-compassion is we're one apple in a full bunch and we're just all here to feed a family, and how are we coming together for that? So, but the beauty of it is it's in the unlearning process for me that I had to get there. And I still struggle with it. I still struggle with it today of comparing myself. And I think too that we have to look back through my childhood is how I learned that this is an issue for me, is because I was a straight A student. I was always comparing myself to others. Captain of cheerleading squad. Like I always wanted to be the top and the go-getter and the perfectionist and all this stuff, and how much it's actually ate at me in a negative way. There are some positives from it, but there's also some negatives of it. There's some things I had to unlearn, and I'm still in the process of unlearning today. So kudos to that. I absolutely love that. And then the unmuting and the invitation, that again, but we just have to speak up and speak out right now. And so now that we've talked about some ways that we can do that, how can we bring it together? So creating better together. What are some, maybe 2 or 3 things that we can do as a group?
Well, the first thing is, as we just talked about, is your relationship with yourself, right? And to get to interdependence, where we're working, creating better together, we've got to have internal interdependence. So that's back to the relationship with yourself. And then it's kind of, so that back to clarity, where are you looking to create better? For the purpose of what? Is it personal? Am I looking to lose some weight, or I'm looking to exercise more, or have personal goals? I have this career path that I'm shifting career paths and going in a different direction. And so it starts with the relationship with self, and then it's about vision, right? So it's like, where are you now? Where would you like to go? And the question that people sometimes forget to ask behind that is, why is that important to you? That's a coach-like question we ask all the time. Someone comes with a presenting challenge or issue, and then it's always, well, what is important about that to you? And then keep asking that question. It's like the 5 whys kind of concept to get to, because if it doesn't have meaning, it's not going to have sustainability, right? It's not going to have, you're not going to be compelled to continue to kind of stay at it and commit through the discomfort that we talked about earlier. So I would say it starts with a relationship with self, then the vision of where do I want to be? What is it that I aspire to grow into or to become? And it's the journey of becoming, right? So that ends up being the journey. And then it's sort of like what we just talked about there.
And so with that too, a lot of times we see that your sphere of influence really matters on these aspects of creating better together. But also sometimes I found in the work side, I even see it actually in the life side too, that we sometimes surround ourselves with like-minded people. And I always say, if you're around 9 broke people, you're about to be the 10th one. So how important is it in the creating better to surround yourself with not just, I don't want yes people. Like yes people are kind of useless to me, because I need you to tell me what I'm doing wrong so that I can be in the process of fixing it. So I need people that are not afraid to say, hey, no, Emily, this is a dumb idea. So how important is it to find those people and to see them as, like I said, geniuses, even though they're going to disagree with you. They're going to find the flaws that you think, oh, this is the perfect plan. And they're going to like put some wrinkles in it. How can you embrace those people?
So the way I look at it is this. The way I talk about what I do is I help people see differently. How can that happen if we're not engaging people that think differently than us, right? If they're all like-minded people, what learning is going to happen to help create better? What growth? What insights are going to happen? And so it's really about diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity, and getting curious. So curiosity plays a big role in creating better, right? How might I? Tell me more about that. What would that look like? That sounds interesting, Emily. What would that look like? And so it's about, for me, I've made the choice to not do that, surround people with people that are like-minded. I've actually made the choice of surrounding myself with people that are like-hearted. And so in terms of putting humans first, creating better by bringing greater humanity to workplaces, communities, families, and relationships. And we can do that with like-hearted people that have some commonality in terms of a mindset of wanting to create better for others and then putting others first. But how that looks is different for everybody because how they're contributing to that is different. And so it's this sort of maybe incongruous explanation of actually you want to seek difference and get curious about difference to create better, rather than surrounding yourself, like you're saying, with either people that think like you use the term yes men. Yes men may have worked at a point in time in the past in the command and control era of the industrial age. Better, I don't believe, comes from that place. It comes from diversity, inclusion, inviting different people into conversation. So if you're a leader and people on your team are quiet, I would not assume that they don't have anything to say. They may be processing stuff. So that's where leadership can step in and say, hey, wait a minute. What do you think about this, Emily? What do you think about this, Brian, if people aren't saying anything? Because when you invite different perspectives, then you give ourselves the opportunity for more complete solutions, more innovative solutions, and that's how we create better.
I agree. And that's the innovation, the curiosity, all those are things that are big to my heart in making sure that we find ways to, for me, it's big about finding frustration elimination. Let's find ways that we can come together, things that are just causing us these stress that shouldn't be, ways that we can do it together. And I have experience seeing it. So it's like, I always joke, I always say it's like Harriet Tubman. It's like whenever she was freed as a slave, she went and she was free, but she came back and she told everybody, it's like, you can be free, you can be free. And some people just didn't believe it, like their cup was filled of all the things that they probably should unlearn, but it's their perspective and it's their reality. So that's just one thing I want to end on. Unless anybody has any other questions, feel free to put them up. My question for you is, how, as people that are like, some people see us as save the world type of people and all this like unrealistic, how do you go back to some of the people that are, their cup's been filled with things of like a fixed mindset, or this is what it is, or something to that degree? How do you approach those? How do you speak to those people?
So with any person that you're working with or connecting with, it's meeting them where they are. There's no judgment of where people are, right? Think about, if I don't build trust with someone, or if we don't build trust with someone, are they going to tell us the stuff that really matters, what's really important, and get vulnerable? So the first thing is meeting them where they are. The other thing is oftentimes modeling vulnerability for them so that they can open up and maybe connect with some of the things they haven't been able to connect with about themselves, or unlearn some stories and kind of get connected to who they really are. And then it's getting curious about what are some things that they've always really been excited about, but kind of muted themselves because someone else told them they weren't good enough, or it's not possible for you, and listening to someone else's through their lens what they think, instead of saying, no, wait a minute, I actually haven't really given that a shot. What if I gave that a shot? How might I? So I invite them into a process of curiosity about themselves, non-judgmentally, right? And so that's how it's, and it starts to get back to the mindset thing. It's like, where are you now with your mindset? And then the curiosity becomes, where is that voice coming from? it's usually not their voice. It's usually someone else's voices that keeps reverberating in there. And how do we get them to quiet that voice and we give them some tools for that, and then start to unmute themselves and share their own voice?
I think that's beautiful how you said that, especially with the fact that it is somebody else's voice in your head. I think that's something that's usually missed out. It's something that you have heard years ago that it may be suppressed, but getting those voices out and knowing that you matter, you're loved. And that's the reason why some people think self-affirmations are silly, but I believe in them because it's a way of taking your own thought and speaking your own words onto your life. That's what this is, surviving quarantine by spreading life, because I feel like if you speak it, it will become, and there's importance in life-giving words.
Yeah. And another thing with that too, is if you find it is your voice, or you start listening and noticing again, your language, when you're speaking the language you're using, you could be kind of keeping yourself into that mindset you're using, right? So that can be an interesting way for people to notice, hey, I'm contributing to this limitation I'm putting on myself. What if I use different language? What if I chose to see myself differently? What possibilities would come up from that?
And I love that you also say, I see it differently. Miss Alice taught me this a while ago, whenever I was in some frustrating times with other people. And she said, just say, I see it differently. And I will tell you, those few words have changed my life forever. And then I taught my kids it, and then they say it. I'm like,
using it back on me. You can't be doing that.
You're not supposed to do that, but it worked. And so it's like a smile, laugh, like, oh, kind of emotion. But I will tell anybody listening to this, I see it differently whenever you're about to be in an argument, or instead of saying, no, you're wrong, say, I see it differently, because you're coming from your perspective and taking away the you, because a you is actually an attack word. Like your idea is not right, or whatever you may come with it. Use an attack word. And that's how we hear it, is that you are going at us. But whenever we put it on ourselves, that I see it differently, that's a magic statement. So, but I just want to say thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. It was such a blessing to have you on. And also thank everybody that hopped on as well. Continue to like, subscribe, and share these, as I believe it is great content for people. I know I've learned so much in this, Brian, and I am just blessed to be able to have spoke with you today. And again, thank you everybody that joined us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Emily. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. I hope you all have an awesome and blessed day.